Welcome to the world of scale modeling with Mike Ashe, where techniques, tips, and creativity come alive with dozens of tutorials, projects, tape-up reviews, and picture references to help you build better scale models and enjoy our wonderful hobby. Welcome to episode 10 of Building and Detailing the Monogram Revell 148 Scale B-25J. In episodes 9A and 9B, I demonstrated my gluing technique using superglue. In this episode, I'm going to show you how I sand and scrape the seams smooth and check for cracks and flaws using silver paint. As a side note, certain sections of this video were speeded up just to save some time. So, let's get started. The superglue seam has an irregular surface, so I use a tiny sanding stick to knock the top edges off before I start scraping. Otherwise, the number 11 X-Acto blade will skip across the surface of the seam line. For all your scraping, be sure to use a new number 11 X-Acto blade and change the blades frequently so you're always using a sharp blade. Notice how I'm changing the position of the blade as I scrape along the seam line. This scraping and sanding technique is an iterative process, so you'll be going back and forth between using one of these small sanding sticks and that sharp number 11 X-Acto blade. Notice how I'm also changing the direction of the sanding stick. As the seam flattens out and starts to disappear, that thin paint line that you see there will also disappear, and that's the indicator that I use that the seam is complete. Note how I use the tip of my finger to check the smoothness of the seam. I like to work my way along a seam line, and keep in mind that this is a very slow and iterative process. And note that I'm holding the number 11 X-Acto blade at a slight angle. This helps the scraping process a great deal. Now I'm using the tip of the number 11 X-Acto blade to carefully shape the plastic for the skid plate on the aft part of the fuselage. Note how firmly I'm holding the X-Acto blade so that it doesn't skip across the surface and create scratches and gouges. Now I'm using a sanding stick that I cut down so that I could square off the openings on the fuselage. The back opening on the bomb bay is very close to the bulkhead, so here I'm using a piece of tape to help protect the surface which has been painted so that I can work on that seam. After the initial scraping and sanding process is complete, I always apply silver paint along the seam line to check for cracks and flaws and imperfections I may have missed. Here I'm checking the seam line, and I only found one tiny flaw in the back right where my finger is, and I marked its location. There were tiny voids on the back edges of the fuselage where the halves met, so I superglued tiny pieces of plastic strip to these locations, and then, once the glue is dried, I'll go ahead and cut them, sand them, and shape them. Here I'm test fitting the assembled tail to the fuselage. To restore the shape of the opening of the turret, I wrapped a fine piece of sandpaper around a wood dowel and carefully worked it in there, smoothing out the surface. I had placed some masking tape over an area very close to the seam line in the hopes of preserving some of the raised detail. Ultimately, it didn't work. I had to remove the masking tape in order to get underneath it in order to finish that seam line. Here again, I'm using silver paint as a crack and flaw detector. And if you find any flaws or cracks, all you have to do is apply super glue to those locations right over the silver paint and then scrape it and sand it smooth. Now it's time to start working on that delicate area forward of the fuselage. Here again, I'm using the tip of an X-Acto blade to shape the plastic, and then I'll sand it and scrape it smooth. Now that all the seam work is done, it's time to wet sand the plastic and get it nice and smooth to remove all the minor scrapes and scratches. In episode 11, I'll be gluing the tail subassembly, and then the main wings, and then the nose piece. The nose piece on this kit is a particular challenge because it doesn't fit very well. I also made some modifications to the interior area of the 8-gun nose piece so that it would better accept the Master's machine guns, and I added a lot of weight to the hollow cavity. So stay tuned for episode 11. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. And when you get the chance, visit our website at www.mikeashley.com, where you're going to find dozens of free PDF downloads, including tutorials, picture references, model galleries, projects, and my 5 original scale modeling books. Thanks to Ben Sound and Videvo for the royalty-free music, and happy scale modeling!